Previously, we attempted to unravel and reenact how men used to dress within the medieval Arab world. But today, we're going to flip the coin and we're going to look at how women used to dress. Can we spot any similarities between a man and a woman's clothing? Welcome to the Golden Middle Age. The woman of the Middle Ages, a topic which has produced so many misconceptions. Misconceptions that often relate to them being stuck at home, doing the house chores, being secluded from wider society, not having any wealth, power or influence. But we'll leave that discussion for our next video, so do make sure you subscribe and turn your notification buttons on. So let's try and unravel how women used to dress. We asked a question at the start about whether we can spot any similarities between how men and how women dress. Surprisingly, yes. And this is because of Islam. Now, in our forthcoming videos, you're going to hear us mentioning Islam a lot. And this is because it had such a profound effect on how people lived, from the small details of daily life to wider society. And as we said in our previous video, Islam propagated modesty in dress. And what this meant is that both men and women utilized long garments, robes, tunics which were loose and which covered most of the body parts. But there was a slight difference. A man had more freedom in how much he was meant to cover. He could reveal some of his arms, his neck or his hair, and it wasn't that frowned upon. Whereas it was mandatory for a woman to wear a khimar or hijab which covered the hair and the neck. They couldn't show off any of their arms. All clothing had to be loose to avoid definition of the body parts. But there was also another difference, and that was women had more freedom in the types of fabric and textiles they were able to wear. Fabrics like silk were only allowed to be worn by women, and this was a general guideline established by Islam. And that's of course if you can afford silk. Nevertheless, this didn't stop certain men from wearing fabrics like silk. Even though Islam ruled that silk was for women, and whoever followed it had to adhere by this general guideline. And it was the official religion of the early medieval empires. Men high in the government ranks or monarchs would still wear these type of fabrics. And why did they do this? When the Umayyad monarchy emerged, they implemented this practice within their government ranks. And they took it from their predecessors, the Sasanian dynasty. Broadly speaking, silk garments, clothes, which were decorated with embroidery in gold, which is also only allowed for women, were utilized by the monarchs. And they done this to exert power, to exert influence, to distinguish themselves from wider society, and in a way to enjoy the rewards power and wealth brought you. Garments made from these extravagant fabrics were given as gifts to people high in the government ranks, or were even given as dowry to women before they were married. And from this we can see the influence textiles had on the medieval Arab world. And we'll definitely discuss this in future videos. Hence we can see an aversion from the early practices of Islam which were established by the Prophet Muhammad. And I think this is a testament to how Islamic those empires truly were. Nevertheless, we move on. As we mentioned earlier, men and women wore identical clothing. It would start off with a qamis or undershirt and undergarments. But some primary sources seem to suggest that women used a sirwal as an undergarment. A sirwal is a form of baggy trousers which is even worn in some cultures today. And they wore them because, in a way, guaranteed that your private region, which is from your hips down to your feet, was covered securely. And if you were a woman of high economic status, you'd have a sirwal made of silk and you'd have access to many different colors. But this wasn't only exclusive to women. Men also used to wear sirwal as it gave you freedom when doing physical activities. So if you were a peasant working the fields or a soldier going to war, a sirwal would have been very handy to wear. Then a long gown would be worn with a sash around the waist and a robe on top of that as well to ensure your body parts are fully covered up and there's no definition. Again, very similar to men. And the clothing item which distinguished men and women was the khimar or the hijab or headscarf. Many different terms you could say. This covered the hair and the neck region and it was mandatory for a woman to wear that. And apparently when I was researching this topic, if you wore black, it meant that you were mourning, which makes sense as this is still practiced today. But if you wore white, it meant that you were a divorcee. And finally, the face veil. Was face veiling introduced by Islam? The answer is no. This existed in pre-Islamic Arabia. Women of high social and economic status would cover their faces, and it didn't only exist in pre-Islamic Arabia, it also existed in Persia and Anatolia. Women of high social status would veil their faces regardless of their religion, and there were three main types of different face veils. The qina, which fell over the face like a curtain, however this isn't as common in today's world. The litham, which was a rectangular cloth which covered the mouth and nose, and the burqa or niqab, which is practiced in some cultures even up until today. And here is our attempted reenactment of how women used to dress in the medieval Arab and Islamic world. If you did enjoy our video, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification button so you're always up to date with our latest videos. And please feel free to leave a comment. Once again, thank you.